If she hadn't screwed up the financial markets, people wouldn't be losing their houses. It's very simple, Darren. People, again, rule 101 of British politics: do not fuck with people's mortgages. The media class, again, as I said, are entirely to blame for this. You probably have to go back to Harold Macmillan to find the last Tory who you could claim cared about fiscal responsibility and economic competence. And I mean, at the moment, like, the biggest poll lead I've seen is 34%. I think it'll go higher. I'm just going to enjoy the Tories being miserable. Like, there's nobody in the country that she's not pissed off upon. She has to go. There's nothing else that can happen, right? So I was just minding my own business at work. I just casually checked my phone, and I found out that Kwarteng's been sacked. After the disaster of the mini budget and the markets collapsing and bond yields dramatically increasing, the pound falling, turns out it wasn't Liz Truss's idea, apparently. It was Kwarteng's idea, and she has now ditched him to save herself, along with Chris Philp, Chief Secretary of the Treasury. He's gone too. It's an absolute massacre down in Tory HQ. He's been replaced by Jeremy Hunt, which is a pretty bold departure from the Tufton Street budget that she and Kwasi had tried to implement 3 weeks ago. It's been an absolute riot in politics today. All this speculation going on. There's been loads of reaction. There's been a press conference. So we're going to watch the press conference first. Then we're going to go and analyse the reaction to this. We'll see how it is. Let's go.
Good afternoon. My conviction that this country needs to go for growth is rooted in my personal experience. I know what it's like to grow up somewhere that isn't feeling the benefits of growth. I saw what that meant, and I'm not prepared to accept that for our country. I want to come.
She's going to grow the pie. I don't know how much. I wonder if we have a counter the amount of times that she said the word growth over the past fucking 4 weeks, whatever. Like, she can't stop saying it. I think she must have realised it's all over, and it's just kind of in autopilot now, just like growth, grow pie growth over and over and over again, like realising what she's even saying.
Country where people can get good jobs, new businesses can set up, and families can afford an even better life. That's why, from day one, I've been ambitious for growth. Since the 2008 financial crisis, the potential of this great country has been held back by persistently weak growth.
Oh, I wonder who was in power for 12 of those 14 years. Don't you think that's a little weird? Don't you think that's strange? How the single party that's been in power for 90% of the time since that event, they've had really low growth. That's really strange. And it's also strange how growth was bigger in the 2 years following the financial crisis when a different political party was in power. Isn't that strange? Isn't that a bit weird?
I want to deliver a low-tax, high-wage, high-growth economy.
But you can't do that with the level of public services, right? I mean, I've not watched PMQs, but I've seen some of the responses where she essentially said that that she had no plans on cutting public spending. Well, she's got no choice. She has no choice. She either keeps high taxes, right? Or she cuts public spending, or there's like continual market turmoil. Like, I'm sorry, that's just gonna happen. It's not like there's some kind of magical compromise position. You have to choose.
It's what I was elected by my party to do.
Oh, by your party, not by the general public, though, were you?
That mission remains. People across this country rightly want stability. That's why we acted to support businesses and households with their energy costs this winter. It's also the case that global economic conditions are worsening due to the continuation of Putin's appalling war in Ukraine. And on top of this, debt was amassed helping people through the COVID pandemic. But it is clear that parts of our mini budget went further and faster than markets were expecting. So the way we
Or
are
that they were just completely economically illiterate. Maybe that's a problem.
delivering our mission right now has to change. We need to act now to reassure the markets of our fiscal discipline. I have therefore
Well, reassure them by having literally any fiscal discipline.
decided to keep the increase in corporation tax that was planned by the previous government. This will raise £18 billion per year. It will act as a
What's interesting as well is this is technically a U-turn on a U-turn in the Conservative 2019 manifesto, which apparently is just completely pointless now. Apparently, like, the 2019 manifesto just completely gone out the window in every single possible respect. And it was in the 2019 manifesto where they're talking about how great it was that they had low corporation tax. So the one thing that Rishi Sunak was planning to do, which was against the wishes of the mandate that they had at the election based off what was in the manifesto, is the thing that she's now also U-turning on. It's a real comedy of errors, but I mean, it's definitely the correct thing to do, to be able to generate the revenue through raising corporation tax based. I mean, good. Let's raise corporation tax. Fine. It's a good thing, but it's not what was in the manifesto that seems to be on everyone's lips right now, considering how much divergence there has been off very little democratic mandate.
down payment on our full medium-term fiscal plan, which will be accompanied by a forecast from the independent OBR. We will do whatever is necessary to ensure debt is falling as a share of the economy in the medium term. We will control the size of the state to ensure that taxpayers' money is always well spent. Our public sector will become more efficient to deliver world-class services for the British people.
Also, it's just frustrating just listening to people who hate the state in general talk about it, where there's this implicit assumption that the only way that you can get a better out of the state is by cutting the things that you think don't need to be there, which inevitably involves cutting more than is necessary, because you feel like you just want to reduce budgets for the sake of it. Rather, no, how about we keep the budgets as they are, and then any efficiency savings can be made on improving the services overall in general. I mean, look at the NHS, where it's continually had a drop in funding as a percentage of GDP for the past decade, and yet, you know, people are like, oh, obviously to cut the quangos and get rid of the diversity offices or whatever it is. You know, it just needs actual funding based upon the size of the country as it is, and considering the scale of what extra we need to be able to keep it afloat, given our aging population, which it's not being given right now.
And spending will grow less rapidly.
Well, actually, the thing that's Boy Meets Minnie is that in her little bloody mini manifesto that they did, Britannia Unchained, back in 2013, they explicitly said that they liked the Singapore healthcare system. David Davis MP has said the NHS is unfixable and that it needs to turn into a private healthcare model, which is amusing considering that he gets £30,000 a year of lobbying money from a private equity firm that has investments in private healthcare. Weird, isn't it?
Than previously planned. I met the former Chancellor earlier today. I was incredibly sorry to lose him.
You weren't. You were just like, oh, great, I have yet another fall guy for all of my mistakes that I can blame so that I can try and remain in power, despite the fact that you're polling. There's another poll that's increased the Labour lead to 34 points. 53% placed 19%. Like, if she is genuine about her desire to destroy the Conservative Party, then she's definitely taken all of the right moves.
He is a great friend, and he shares my vision to set this country on the path to growth. Today, I have asked Jeremy Hunt to become the new Chancellor. He's one of the most experienced and widely respected government ministers and parliamentarians.
I mean, this is a bit of a double-edged sword in that Jeremy Hunt is at least not like fundamentally moronic in the same way that Kwarteng is and/or was by implementing the silly libertarian policies of the IEA and all of the Heritage Foundation money that Liz Truss has clearly gotten to get to this position that she's in right now. But he's also the guy who had the war with the juniors at doctors, who wrote a book about how to privatise the NHS. There's another one there, right? And yeah, like, the state of the NHS is almost partly down to his premiership as health secretary. So it's usually replaced one shade of shit with a different shade of shit. Although clearly the rightoids are absolutely crazy about this shit, as they are mad about Jeremy Hunt, not because of the things he did to the NHS, right? None of that stuff. But they're actually mad because of his policies. He is admiring the Chinese Communist Party's lockdown policy, which, to be fair, I think was pretty draconian. But there were definitely some elements of their desire of eradication strategy that we should have taken at least early, right? Like, we're on an island. When you look at someone like, for example, New Zealand, who did do pretty strict lockdown policies and also border control, right? That's another point that Jeremy Hunt made about lockdown policies, and the border control when you have an island during a pandemic is super important, and we could have done without major risk to the people actually in the country to try and control the spread right in the early days when we knew, right? When people in northern Italy were having to share houses with the corpses of their loved ones because of how little prepared Italy was to deal with the pandemic. We could have taken those precautions right then, and Jeremy Hunt is right and correct in his assumption there. But also, it seems weird for them to critique, them say the Conservative Party is being taken over. Where the CCP takeover of Western governments proceeds apace with then they literally voted for Liz Truss as leader, who was a person who, whilst during the election campaign, was revealed who was incredibly impressed with the work ethic of the Chinese people, which is down to the down reforms of the Chinese Communist Party. Their market reforms that actually made workers' lives worse, took away a load of their workers' rights, stripped away all but one trade union which was affiliated to the CCP already. But now, it's only now, right? It's only now that Jeremy Hunt says, well, maybe as we're an island, maybe we should have pursued a zero COVID strategy. That's only now that they're getting frustrated with the links to any kind of admiration of Chinese policy, which is very strange, very, very strange. It's like, yeah, neoliberal party doing neoliberalism things neoliberally, and they're like, is this communism? Very, very strange, but let's continue.
And he shares my convictions and ambitions for our country. He will deliver the medium-term fiscal plan at the end.
But also in general, this just pisses off the whole of the Conservative base. It's a massive U-turn of what they really wanted, which was this disaster budget. Let's not forget, the Conservative membership, they wanted this. It's their entire reason that we're in this predicament that we are in right now is because they were sold a moon on a stick, quote unquote, by Liz Truss during the election campaign to become Conservative leader, where she promised all of the amazing stuff like, we can have all of these low taxes, or look how amazing the country will be with when I just destroy the state with my libertarian principles and my whatever, despite the fact that no one in the country voted for it. They're like, oh, we love that, low taxes, and then realize, oh, hang on a minute, this crashes the economy, doesn't it? Oh, yeah, it does crash the economy. Whoops, well, you got what you wanted. And now she's immediately turned around on that. You turned on everything, increasing corporation tax, which is what they didn't want, putting, someone who's quote unquote part of the left wing of the Conservative Party, if you could call it such a thing, as Chancellor, massively completely diverging from the kind of path that she was on with Kwarteng as Chancellor. But she's already pissed off the moderates within the Conservative Party anyway with what she's done to this point already, and by not just going, considering how hated she is by the public, and the fact that come next election, all of her, like, a huge chunk of the Conservative Party all going to be out of a job, apart from the highly paid roles they have at private equity firms or as landlords, which is 26% of them actually are statistically. So it seems like that she's trying to take the path to make as many people angry as possible, which, to be honest, I'm finding very funny.
End of this month, he will see through the support we are providing to help families and businesses, including our energy price guarantee that's protecting people from higher energy bills this winter. And he will drive our mission to go for growth, including taking forward the supply-side reforms that our country needs. We owe it to the next generation to improve our economic performance.
I mean, she's done by Christmas, right? I mean, at this point, she said there wasn't going to be a U-turn. There's been a U-turn. She said that Kwarteng wasn't going to get sacked, and now he's been sacked. She said that she has no intention of resigning as Prime Minister, which means 100% she's gone by Christmas, possibly even Halloween. It's been said that there's going to be a plot to replace her by Rishi Sunak or Penny Mordaunt at some point in the future. And there are already enough letters to trigger a leadership election or a no confidence vote have already been submitted to the 1922 committee. But Graham Brady is on holiday until Monday, so they can't process that just yet. They also need to change the rules so they can actually remove her, because Tory PMs are immune from a confidence vote until they've had a year in the position. They'd have to change the rules first. Graham Brady is going to get back to a massive stack of people angry, letters from angry people at the destruction of the Conservative Party from the inside. He's got to process all of that, and then they've got to be able to somehow change the rules to get rid of her, which they may or may not do at this point. So it's all really up in the air. But I'm 100% of the opinion that she'll just be gone. But the Conservative Party is ruthless. They're an election-winning juggernaut. If they don't think that Liz Truss can A, manage the economy, or B, see them through another election cycle, they'll get rid of her. They'll get rid of her instantaneously, which they should. Like, for the good of the country at this point, like. The alternative is so milquetoast and lukewarm in comparison with Sir Keith Starmer KC, right? That I do not really care about. I don't have any joy at the understanding that he'll be Prime Minister. Nothing motivates me about the idea of a Keir Starmer premiership, right? But the mortgage issues and the issues with the pound and the issues that we have with bond yields and what's going to happen to our country economically, it has to stop. It has to stop. It has to be rectified immediately. And if her U-turn here doesn't fix it immediately, she has to go and someone competent has to replace her. I don't care who, right? Sure. Oh, no justice. Or you're betraying your leftist principles by hoping that there's some kind of decorum. Yeah, I don't want people losing their homes. Like, I don't care how boomer or irritating these people are, and the fact that they've got a mortgage and a bunch of millennials don't. I get it. I get that it's awful, but these people are getting basically exactly what they wanted by voting Tory. But these people need to keep their homes. I'm sorry, that just has to happen. These people need to be protected, and they're not being protected at the moment. There just has to be a change. I don't care who it is. There just needs to be someone who's better than Liz Truss in power.
To deliver higher wages, new jobs, and better public services, and to ease the burden of debt. I have acted decisively today because my priority is ensuring our country's economic stability. As Prime Minister, I will always act in the national interest. This is always my first consideration. I want to be honest, this is difficult, but we will get through this storm, and we will deliver the strong and sustained growth that can transform the prosperity.
That's to growth number 8, I believe.
Of our country for generations to come. I'll now take questions.
So what's an U-turn of all the mini budget? Because they're still keeping the uplift on the threshold on national insurance, whilst also keeping the cut to national insurance as well, or the reversal of the raise in national insurance. So I don't think they've got it all covered, but at least you're slowly rowing back pieces of the budget. Just then they're going to keep rowing it back until until it gets to the point at which the markets start calming down. I think that is clearly what they're trying to do here. Like, I wonder how long it will take, but you can just see that it's somebody who's just lost. She just doesn't have a clue what the fuck she's doing.
Can I start with Ben Riley-Smith, Telegraph?
Thank you, Prime Minister. Clearly a difficult day. Can you explain to the public why you think you should remain as Prime Minister, given you've jumped to key tax cuts that led you to be elected?
Immediately goes to the Telegraph like, oh, where's the journalists who agree with me, who put me into the position that I'm in, basically.
And got rid of your Chancellor.
I'm absolutely determined to see through what I have promised, to deliver a higher growth, more prosperous United Kingdom, to see us through the storm we face. We've already delivered the energy price guarantee, making sure people aren't facing huge bills this winter. But it was right, in the face of the issues that we had, that I acted decisively to ensure that we have economic stability, because that is vitally important.
I mean, now you did the complete opposite with the mini budget, or the fiscal event, whatever you want to call it. Like, it's just this. There's just no rhyme or reason to any of this. I mean, if you wanted to ensure economic stability, the energy price guarantee was good. Like, I'm not saying. I mean, I say good. I mean, it was acceptable. It was necessary and was done against the wills of the quote unquote free market. Rather than, but there should have been a windfall tax. But whatever. At least the energy price guarantee happened, and more people than were going to are now going to be able to heat their homes through the winter period. Like, sure. But you didn't need to do the ridiculous rest of the fiscal event. It didn't need to happen. You're not. There's even more weak and wobbly than Theresa May.
Important to people and businesses right across our country. Harry Cole.
It was like someone choosing what to order at a kebab shop. Like.
Thank you, Prime Minister Harry Cole from The Sun. You were the one that wanted to cut the 45p rate. You stood on a platform to win the leadership of the Conservative Party on a platform to cut corporation tax. You and the Chancellor, the ex-Chancellor, designed this budget together, in lockstep, we're told, at times in secret, the two of you. He has to go because of the fallout from it. How come you get to stay?
Well, my priority is making sure we deliver the economic stability that our country needs. That's why I had to take the difficult decisions I've taken today. The mission...
The issue is that she has, I mean, she's kind of put herself into like this huge kind of catch-22, right? Where if she keeps everything as is with regards to the fiscal event and the actual cabinet, the poll ratings will stay low, the financial markets will continue getting worse, and they might even just get destroyed for good. If she U-turns on all of it and replaces Kwarteng, which she has done, then she pisses off the membership, she pisses off the people who put her into the position that she's in, and her position becomes completely untenable because all of the kind of platform that she ran on to be leader, none of that matters anymore because she just rode it all back and become, continuity, mainstream conservatism, which is not what the membership wanted. They wanted something radical, something different. But she also, she appeases the MPs. But the MPs don't want her gone anyway, so why would she do that? But then if she keeps Kwarteng but then continues rolling back bits of the mini budget, then it's just a completely humiliating climb down, and she just has no ability to be able to govern correctly. Like she there's no good, as far as if you're Liz Truss and you want to preserve your premiership, you want to preserve the fate of the Conservative Party, there's nothing that you can do apart from go. She has to go. There's nothing else that can happen, right? If you're a Conservative Party platform, the only thing you can do is get her to go, replace her with somebody competent, and hope that over the next 2 and a bit years, things look up slightly and the poll numbers get a little bit better. Maybe there'll be boots on the ground in Ukraine, and the UK can use that Falkland style to try and resurrect the Conservative Party from a poll deficit, just like they had in the 1980s. Maybe that's the thing that they can do. Maybe that's the only kind of path that they have to retain power. But Liz Truss, she ain't going to be part of that. I'm sorry.
Remains the same. We do need to raise our country's economic growth levels. We do need to deliver for
Number 9.
People across the country. We're committed to delivering on the energy price guarantee, which people are already seeing in their bills. But ultimately, we also need to make sure that we have economic stability, and I have to act in the national interest as Prime Minister. Chris May.
This is a lost little lamb. I almost feel sorry for her if I didn't absolutely despise everything that she stands for.
Excuse the bluntness, Prime Minister, but given everything that has happened, what...
Oh yeah, I'm absolutely peak accelerationist, right? I hope she stays. I hope she continues destroying things at this point, as far as, the credibility of the Conservatives, right? As long as things get fixed with the mortgage issue, and people stop leasing their homes, as far as I'm concerned, the best position for as far as I think a lefty is concerned is that Liz Truss stays in power, but the entirety of the mini budget gets reversed. Which I don't think is going to happen, but it's clear that as they learn further about what's being done, as far as the mini budget is concerned, that the actual policy prescriptions are not tenable either. But then again, if you roll back all the policy prescriptions, you roll back everything that Liz Truss stands for, and she can't continue anymore. But if she rolls it all back and continues and stays with Jeremy Hunt, then like that is the best position as far as we're concerned, because her image is irreparable at this point. And by keeping Jeremy Hunt, she pisses off all of the people who are like libertarian types as well. So, but the mini budget has to get reversed. Like that has to get. I mean, but again, as far as I'm concerned, reversing the mini budget almost certainly has to entail the removal of Liz Truss as well. As I said previously, she has to go. Like. But if she did stay around after reversing it, that would be the best position possible.
Credibility do you have to continue governing?
What I've done today is made sure that we have economic stability in this country. Jeremy Hunt, as Chancellor, is somebody who shares my desire for a high-growth, low-tax
Number 10.
economy. But we recognise, because of current market issues, we have to deliver the mission in a different way. And that's what we are absolutely committed to do, achieving that stability at what is a very difficult time globally.
Like, she's just not answering the questions. Like, you're just saying, I have economic stability and also growth, also Jeremy Hunt, let's protect medium term. And that's it. When no accountability for what's happened as a response to the fiscal event and how essentially her leadership is untenable, given that she stood on a platform that she's now rowing back. What was the point? What's the point of having her there anymore?
Robert Peston.
Prime Minister, the former Tory Chancellor, Philip Hammond, has just said that you have...
Oh, you're absolutely right, Virgil. Like, the longer she stays, Labour will get an even bigger majority. Like, I mean, at the moment, like, the biggest poll lead I've seen is 34%. I think it'll go higher. I think more Lib Dems will just transfer over. More Lib Dems will just be like, well, I mean, to be fair, we'll probably get loads of tactical voting as well, but like understanding of tactical voting is now going to go out the window. Like, there are places like, for example, the Southwest in like the blue wall where Labour is polling 20 points ahead of the Tories at some points, right? So all of the previous places where you'd vote Liberal Democrat as a tactical vote to get the Tories out, that's all gone now. Keir Starmer is now the Tory. Keir Starmer is now the safe pair of hands for the economy that people seem to think that he is. So the Mr. Things will not fundamentally change, but we'll have a publicly owned company that gives subsidy to the private sector to make green energy. Like, sure, whatever. Like, that's the quote unquote, fiscally responsible person is Keir Starmer. So you can't just vote tactically against him anymore. Like, I think Liberal Democrats will realise this, or people who previously voted Lib Dem, and they'll all move over to Labour, and the lead will continue to grow. Like, Lib Dem's polling numbers have dropped, and they still really haven't repaired the fact that we're in this position. We are in this position because of the Lib Dems, right? The Lib Dems helped David Cameron into power in 2010. The Lib Dems are the people who enabled austerity. The Liberal Democrats are the ones who rubber-stamped neoliberal ideology for a decade to come by giving tacit support to it in 2010. Health and Social Care Act. All that kind of stuff. All the NHS reforms that came from Jeremy Hunt in the first Cameron administration as part of the coalition government. The Lib Dems caused this. They have no credibility. Like, so yeah, I think people will move across and Labour will get even more votes, and I think they might even reach 60%. The longer that, if Liz Truss continues being the leader, I think Labour will reach 60%. It's gonna be I don't think there'll be an early general election either, because the Tory MPs do not want to lose their jobs. They would sooner rather destroy the Conservative Party momentarily and try and rebuild it with a new leader than they would calling a general election now. Unless, of course, Liz Truss sees the writing on the wall and calls one herself out of spite, which would be, like, that would be the real Banter Timeline season finale. But I don't think that's going to happen. We're talking Tony Blair win number of jobs. I think bigger than Tony Blair. I think the Tories will be on double-digit seats if we continue down the road we're going down. If they don't remove Liz Truss, they're going to be on less than 100 seats. It's going to be an absolute massacre, a wipeout. I mean, people like Richard Tice was calling for a general election, was calling for the end of the Conservative Party. And that we're witnessing the destruction internally of a political. I've talked before on the stream. There could even be a split. There could be a Conservative Party split. We could have the Boris Johnson party trying to return to government. Boris Johnson could join Reform UK. I have no idea what's going to happen. We're living in turbulent political times. So much could happen. And if there is a party split, there will almost certainly be like a Labour Party. Almost dictatorial levels of single party governance. I mean, like, I've made peace with the fact that change is never happening, the world's never getting better, the best we can hope for is continuity and neoliberalism from Keir Starmer. But as I've made peace with that, that means that I'm going to at least be able to enjoy the Conservative MPs eating out of bins. Like, that's I'm watching all the Conservative Party members get seethe and cope. Like, spite arc, we're continuing the spite-based politics arc. That's all I care about. I just want Tories to be absolutely miserable. Like the idea of Keir Starmer as Prime Minister, giving his track record as Labour Party leader, that's not something that is particularly palatable. But I've made peace. I'm just going to enjoy the Tories being miserable at this point. That's all I'm going to concentrate on.
Totally trashed the Tory party's election-winning reputation for economic competence. Will you apologise to your party?
I think the thing is, the issue is, right, I've got a whole segment about this on my YouTube channel, which you can go watch. It's the myth of Tory economic competence. The fact that Robert Peston comes up to her and says, it's only now that we've trashed the Tory record on economic competence, despite the fact that it was the ERG that pushed the removal from the single market, which massively affected the UK economy. It's the Conservative policies of austerity that stymied growth, that destroyed took funding away from being able to get extra infrastructure investments, whilst borrowing costs were at an all-time low. In the wake of the global financial crisis, we could have done fiscal expansion to be able to invest in infrastructure, to be able to get extra productivity, which has been stagnant for 10 years. We've had no wage growth, we've had very little economic growth, and any economic growth gains that have done have only gone to the bourgeois at the expense of the rest of society, who've had to deal with crippling austerity cuts. 330,000 people lost their lives because of austerity cuts, studies have shown. At the time when we could have been borrowing to try and be able to engage in fiscal expansion to rebuild our economy post-global financial crisis. That's what Kevin Rudd did in Australia. They had the best results out of the GFC, right? And then during the neoliberal reforms under Margaret Thatcher, she only really survived because there was enough tax money coming in from the discovery of North Sea oil to be able to fund the dole program to deal with the huge amounts of unemployment and the stripping away of state programs under her watch. Like, there's no credibility economically for the Conservative Party, at least not since, not even Ted Heath, because there was the Barber boom and everything that happened. Like, you probably have to go back to Harold Macmillan to find the last Tory who could claim cared about fiscal responsibility and economic competence. And it's only the media, right? It's only the media's consistent buy-in to this ridiculous narrative that's allowed the Tories to continue in this position. But the only reason why David Cameron ever became Prime Minister in 2010, apart from obviously his enablement by the Liberal Democrats, but also was because of 10 years, a whole decade of newspaper whining about Muslims and brown people and benefit scroungers, like welfare recipients being given too nice TVs. All of that stuff, all that manufacturing consent was brought to bring down a pretty weak and neoliberal Labour government. Wasn't right-wing enough for the fucking Murdoch press at the time. And so it was only that huge amounts of, and you can see that as soon as the Conservatives get elected, all of the talk about immigration as a political issue, that all kind of dropped off the face of the earth, really, as far as the media is concerned. And the coverage dropped, so did people's apparent care about it, right? So the media have been complicit in this, and they were complicit in making sure that Liz Truss became the Tory party leader and became Prime Minister. Mail, Express, Telegraph, all backed Liz Truss over Rishi Sunak, despite the fact that Rishi Sunak was the only person there who, out of the two of them, who showed basic economic credentials, basic understanding of how economics worked. I mean, far be it from me to heap praise on somebody as awful as Rishi Sunak, who literally said that he wanted to take money away from poor people to put into wealthy Conservative seats. He's a monster who decided to try and trash trans people because he was afraid that if he didn't seem to be a culture warrior, he would lose the leadership election. And we even saw his poll ratings go up after he took that line, right? So he's just as bad on so many issues of Liz Truss, but at least he was the one during the election said there would be a run on the pound, said that interest rates would skyrocket, said that but the bond markets would fall to pieces. He predicted all of this, right? And then both the media and the Conservative membership ignored him because they also don't believe. Really, I really don't think they actually believe in Tory economic competence. It's all just essentially an op. It's all just one massive consent manufacturing machine to be able to keep the Conservative Party in power, to protect their own bottom lines as media corporations, right? I've talked about manufacturing consent all of the time, and it only ever exists because these people, it's in their economic interest to do so, right? All they care about is ensuring that they deliver the maximum amount of profit to their shareholders, and they do that by ensuring that corporation tax is low, all that kind of stuff. And that's why Liz Truss got in. It's why George Osborne got in. Why Philip Hammond became Chancellor as well. Theresa May. All of this stuff. It's all complicit. It's all down to the media's vice grip on the UK Overton window. Like, how did we get here? The media got here. The media got us here. Anything outside of the neoliberal bubble immediately got trashed as being fanciful or being communism. Like, do you all remember the broadband communism meme, right? From the Labour's pledge to give everybody free broadband at point of use, like a national broadband service, which makes sense because it's the demand is inelastic, right? It's very difficult to have competition, especially when things are divvied up between broadband providers, depending on which area you are. All of that got trashed in the media. It wasn't given even a proper look in. It's just, like, they're all complicit. The Tory members are complicit, the media's complicit. And again, I'm glad that the myth of Tory fiscal competence has been completely shattered at this point. Completely shattered. But even up till now, Robert Peston's like, well, it's only now that we see the economic competence, now that the markets are collapsing. It literally has taken up to this point where people are going to lose their houses. They're actually bothering to stick the knife in on this one.
Well, I am determined to deliver on what I set out when I campaigned to be party leader. We need to have a high growth economy, but we have to recognise that we are facing very difficult issues as a country. And it was right, in the national interest, that I made the decisions I've made today to restore that economic stability so we can deliver, first of all, helping people through this winter and next winter with their energy bills, but also making sure that our country is on the long-term footing for sustainable economic growth. Thank you very much, everybody.
Aren't you going to say?
Just like what? Just like it's the David Cameron style walkout. Do you remember, like, David Cameron would always just go thank you and then immediately just kind of run away? And she's just done that. Like, literally, like, that's what the journalists saying now. Just silence. Like the shaking of the head from Krishna Guru Murthy there. And she's got no answer. She has no answer. Like, we really are reaching the death knell at this point, to be honest. Which, based. But there's been some reaction. Nigel Farage, after at the start of as soon as the mini budget was released, he was like, excellent, a proper Conservative budget, low tax, let's go. Just shows how little he understands about economics. But anyway, and how much of not a friend of people he is. For someone who was being positioned as being a champion of normal people, right? A champion of the everyman, suddenly, just to support economic policy that only benefits the massively super rich. Oh, funny that, with the one who was standing in the golden elevator with Donald Trump. Anyway, let's listen to what he has to say about the fucking fiasco.
So the big U-turn is coming. Yes, she's going to raise corporation tax to 25% to make us completely uncompetitive, wholly unconservative. Kwasi Kwarteng will go. All he was doing was following her instructions. Oh, yeah. She now has no...
If your idea of conservatism is tax cuts regardless of economic damage, then you're an idiot. Like, even me, as a Marxist, can understand that there's a difference between some, like, fiscal conservatism in that you don't do big spending splurges, which you should do because deficits are fine as long as they're for infrastructure, but whatever. But you don't do big fiscal expansion, but you also make sure the market's up and you keep the economy ticking or whatever. The quote unquote fiscal responsibility line, right? Like, that's technically a conservative platform. But if your platform relies on tax cutting at whatever the cost, no matter what happens to the economy or what happens to normal people, then I'm sorry, Nigel, you're just an idiot. You just don't know what you're talking about.
Validity. 12 years of Tory misrule. We need a realignment of British politics under a new electoral system. This lot have betrayed us, let us down completely and utterly. We're becoming the laughingstock of the world. So the big...
I mean, we've been the laughingstock of the world for quite a while now, Nigel. I don't know if you've missed that. I don't know if I mean, to be fair, you had a pretty big part to play in being the laughingstock of the world, to be fair, especially considering his campaigning for things that were just not good for the country regardless. Anyway, especially on an economic platform, right? But it's clear that he's part of the reason why people are all laughing at us, because again, he supported the nonsense economic reforms that was pushed through in the fiscal event. Like, he's just as complicit in all of this as people like Truss are. I mean, to say there's been 12 years of mismanagement, like, you got what you wanted. You literally installed Boris Johnson in 2019 by making sure that you played spoiler against certain seats which were Tory strongholds and only ran against Labour, deliberately to split the vote to be able to put these people in power. What do you like, things Conservatives, or don't you? It's very clear that there was very incredibly divergent economic paths that both Boris Johnson and Liz Truss wanted to go down, in that Boris Johnson ran on a campaign of levelling up, ostensibly being able to, inject money into deprived areas, right? Actually engaging in some kind of government, like, interventionist fiscal policy. And now you're saying, well, actually, it's good that I installed him, right? I wanted to do that. But now someone who does the opposite, who does trying to do fiscal contraction, but not really, because they're borrowing huge amounts of money to be able to pay for the energy price guarantee, whilst also cutting taxes and trying to not cut public services, but also cut national insurance whilst not raising corporation tax, which is just a nonsensical platform. Like, oh, excellent. This is the excellent budget that I wanted. And now we're seeing the economic ruin after that. So what is it? What is it? Like, do you want these people to be in power or not? Do you like conservatism or not? Do you like fiscal responsibility? This is completely incoherent as far as Nigel Farage is concerned. Yeah, absolutely. It's been an absolute laugh riot, JDM. I really, really, absolutely loving this shit. Incredibly funny. But also look here at Darren Grimes. Like, I think we should all be worried and despondent about the fact that financial markets and the media can depose a prime minister as quickly as if they don't like the policies espoused by them. It's a shame that you weren't saying the same things, Darren, about Jeremy fucking Corbyn. There was the whole idea behind Jeremy Corbyn is, oh, there'll be a run on the pound. The whole economy will collapse if we have Jeremy Corbyn ruining our country with his pseudo-communism, as Anne Widdecombe put it, during the 2017 election, right? And then also with the media talk about the angle of his bow, or the kind of coat or the tie that he wears, or the fact that calling him a terrorist sympathizer. And he's like, this is exactly the reason why people poo-poo Jeremy Corbyn at that point. But even so, like, the media didn't even really depose Liz Truss. Liz Truss is being deposed by her own policies. People are seeing their own mortgage rates rise. They're seeing the fact that I'm paying extra £200 a month on my mortgage, and they know that it's a direct result of the policies that she was engaging in, right? Like, if you think financial markets shouldn't be the deciding factor on who's prime minister, great. Well, stop talking about the economy when it comes to who you vote for at a general election, because clearly you don't care. These people talk out of both sides of their mouth, like, constantly. It's ridiculous. But again, like, if she hadn't screwed up the financial markets, people wouldn't be losing their houses. It's very simple, Darren. People, again, rule 101 of British politics: do not fuck with people's mortgages. She's managed to literally piss off everybody. Young people are pissed off because they don't like the Tories anyway, but they also don't like cutting public services because they rely on them more because they're usually poorer. She's pissed off old people with mortgages by making their mortgage rates massively increase. She's pissed off, like, the rightoids by saying that she wants more immigration, right? She's pissed off all of the Reform UK type people, all the Brexity folk, because she's a Remainer to begin with, and she's appointed now a Remainer Chancellor in Jeremy Hunt, who's supposed to be too left for these people. Who's all the lockdown, all the anti-lockdown, like, cranks, all of the cookers, all of those people are now frustrated because of Jeremy Hunt's being pro-lockdown. Like, there's nobody in the country that she's not pissed off, apart from the tiny minority of, like, incredibly, like, one-track mind support the Tories, whatever. Or, like, people who aren't racist but are Tories, but do own their own homes, but have paid off their mortgage, who also like the lockdowns and also vote Tory. Like, that tiny minority of people, there's the only people that she's not pissed off at this point. It's so frustrating to realise that people on the right literally don't care about principles, and so hypocrisy doesn't matter to them. I mean, I don't care about hypocrisy. I care about utility, right? One of my main criticisms of the right is that everything is about new veiled threats or veiled references to people's hypocrisy, right? They won't ever answer about the utility of the things that they espouse. All they will do is they'll attack their opponents based on some kind of manufactured idea of apparent hypocrisy, rather than thinking, well, is the result of this policy bad or good? Like, if they're being hypocritical, like, fine, own it, whatever, I don't care. But at least acknowledge the utility or no. Or they don't even acknowledge the utility. They're like, we can't get rid of Liz Truss because it's Liz Truss and she was voted in by a very small minority of Tory members rather than the general electorate, against the wishes of the democratic mandate that was given to Boris Johnson based off his manifesto. And that's negative utility. And people losing their houses, that's negative utility. Simple. Like, but the fact that their worldview is so incoherent, I understand why you're pissed off with that shit. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's true. Therese Coffey's still good friends. I mean, still deputy PM at this point, at time of recording. So, but yeah, like, these people just, like, it's so crazy. The positions, the kind of the mental gymnastics these people will go through to justify. Again, it must only be, right? It must only be that they have the same kind of brain poison that Twitter liberals have, Twitter centrists have, where it's just red team versus blue team. There's no such thing as policy, there's no such thing as utility, there's no such thing as material reality. All it is just blue team good, red team bad, as far as these people are concerned. And so they dislike Liz Truss for what she's done to the party specifically, rather than what she's done to the country, what she's done to the markets, what she's done to the economy. They don't care about any of that. They only care about the blue team winning because they've implanted their flag inside the blue team's tent. Right? And so if the blue team loses, they get pissed off, and that's all they really care about. I'm sure that must be the case, and that these people don't have any actual principles. They just support the blue team in the same way that the Twitter centrists all support the red team. At time of recording, obviously, because it's Keith Starmer, right? When it was Jeremy Corbyn, they never supported the red team. But as soon as the sensible man, right, where their only politics is based on vibes and also disliking the Tories, like, and so they'll vote for the red team regardless, and they won't even listen to any discussion about the effectiveness of the policies platform that Keir Starmer espouses or the ideology that he espouses, right? It's the same brain rot, just in a different rosette. Are people looking here, like, saying the tax burden rises again, the Tory party proves itself ungovernable again, not content with blocking a tax cut, backed pensioners are now forced a tax rise. Yes, you're borrowing hundreds of thousands of hundreds of billions of pounds to pay for the energy price guarantee, and the markets didn't like it. You can't just cut taxes. It's simple. It's super simple. It's just like very, very simple. I mean, yes, it has been a disaster, Emily, and this is the person who really wanted Kemi Badenoch to be PM, who ran on a very similar platform. Like, what? These people just don't live in reality. But it's also looking at the liberals, looking at the mess, like with Emily Maitlis here, like this unhinged political haze, and starting to seriously consider entryism as the underlying mechanic. Did rogue outsiders infiltrate Tory grassroots membership to wreak havoc, as if she can't see what she has been part of manufacturing this as part of the media class, right? The media class, again, as I said, are entirely to blame for this. They never, ever, up until this point, questioned the precept of neoliberal thought. And it's reached its natural conclusion, and things have fallen apart. I'm like, you did this. You got what you wanted, right? This is entirely what the media kept uncritically platforming people like Emily Carver and Matthew Lesh and all these people from the Institute of Economic Affairs or Policy Exchange or the Centre for Policy Studies, all these people, right? They kept platforming these people as if they're real experts, which they're not. Let's be real. Think tankers are not real experts. They are paid propagandists for the rich in this country, right? That's all they exist to do. And they've been platformed completely uncritically up until now. Like there was a let me try and find it. There was a moment in Cross Question on LBC the other night, where Adam Bienkov, I actually think is pretty good. Like, I'm not a massive fan of Byline Times, but Adam Bienkov as their Westminster correspondent is pretty good. Oh, let's not watch that. And he was he took a punt at Emily Carver about.
I'm joined by Andrew
their
Marr in the
funding.
studio now, LBC presenter.
Let me refresh that.
Well,
He-
you know,
he was-
the agenda that Liz
It's the first time I've seen any media figure actually point at the Institute of Economic Affairs and say, who funds you? Why do you? What possible reason could you espouse the thing that you espouse based upon the organisation that you're in? And I think it's the first time anybody seen the integrity of places, these think tanks, questioned out in the open. And it's taken 12 years. It's taken us 12 years of Tory government for this to happen. There's a really great video by Tom Nicholas about how think tanks and fake experts shape the news. Basically, like there was a story about how the Institute of Economic Affairs, I think it might have been, or it might have been the Adam Smith Institute. Yeah, Adam Smith Institute posted some kind of hypothesis that you should privatize the moon for economic growth, and it got panned in the press. But these people are so propagandistic. They're just like, what can we privatize? Let's just do something random about this. Let's privatize the moon, shall we? And then it was treated as like a sincere topic of discussion by the media because it was part of these think tanks. They're nonsensical. But anyway, let's watch this clip.
Well, you know, the agenda that Liz Truss has been pushing in her media budget, you know, shrink the size of the state and fund in order to get big tax cuts. That's an agenda that organisations like the Institute for Economic Affairs have been pushing for years, including at Conservative Party conference, where they host a lot of events with ministers and where they boast that Liz Truss has been one of their most regular attendees at. And so I think it does matter who funds these organisations because.
And like Liz Truss is basically being groomed into her position by these people. Again, she was the previous person who was a Lib Dem, and then she just kind of went with the flow. Unless she's just some like long time like socialist sleeper agent, you know, being sent back through time to destroy the Tories from the heart, right? Like, she clearly has only one ambition, and that is to be Prime Minister to gain political power. And she was happy to take whatever money that she could to be able to get to that position. It just happened to be the people with all the money are the people who fund these libertarian think tanks. Crazy how that works, isn't it?
Because often people from these organisations appear, you know, quite rightly on programmes like this, and there isn't the question of who is actually funding the positions, funding the research.
Is your accusation with me sitting on this panel that somehow what I am saying is paid for?
Yes. Yes, it is. It is entirely paid for. You are a stooge for the bourgeois. All you exist to do, Emily, is to repeat bourgeois talking points and make the rich richer. That's what they pay you for. If they didn't think that it would be better for their bottom line, they wouldn't be giving you the money because they have fiduciary responsibility to generate profit for their shareholders. If the money that they were spending on your wages, Emily, was not profitable for them, they'd stop. That's why you exist. You exist to make money. You exist to make the rich richer. All your opinions are paid for. I wish people would just come out and say it. She's a propagandist. She's a propagandist. All she's doing is propaganda for rich people. That's all that it is. Come out and say it. Right? Like, don't be coy. Oh, are you trying to imply my positions are paid for? Yes, 100% paid for.
Because that is incredible. It's no surprise that someone who believes in free markets in general might wish to work for a think tank that also believes in that. And it's no coincidence that a politician like Liz Truss might be more interested in the Institute of Economic Affairs than she would be with a left-wing think tank. That's how.
I mean, she wasn't particularly interested in a right-wing think tank when she was a Lib Dem member, was she? It was only strange how she changed tack to being very right-wing as soon as institutes popped up with loads of money to be able to fund her to be able to implement their policy platforms. It's weird, isn't it? That's very strange. But even if she thinks that she's being totally and entirely sincere in her opinions, right, which she probably is, I don't even know. I don't care whether she's sincere in her opinions, quite frankly, because it doesn't really matter to me whether she's being sincere. What matters is the consequences of the rhetoric that she espouses and the material reality that she creates by people adopting her policy proposals. And is that, you know, she would not have the platform that she had if she had any other viewpoints. If she wasn't a libertarian free market think tanker, they wouldn't have employed her, and the money that flows down to her from the people who pay her bills. People expect to get extra returns off giving her that money. The rich people who, if they didn't stop doing that, would stop making money off it, would stop giving her money. It's simple. Like, you invest for profit, not for a loss. It's not a difficult concept to be able to get behind. And they use that money to give her the platform that she does. And she wouldn't be here on this stage right now talking to us if her opinions were not being paid for by the Institute of Economic Affairs. Whether she believes in them or not, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether she's being sincere or not, because the only reason anybody's hearing any words that she has to say is because she has that dark money behind her. It's simple.
Things work, and the reason why we protect the privacy of our donors, because places like the Byline Times would go after them, right? You know.
Yes, good, rightly so. You've destroyed the country with shitty economic policy, and you should be called out and you should be derided for it. We need to know who these monsters are so that we can take them down, so that we can give them the proper accountability that they deserve for the ruination they've tried to inflict upon the economy. Like, so we're trying to protect our investors because people might go after them. Yeah, because you're worried that people will hate the fact that they're garbage. It's like how people say there isn't a conspiracy of rich people. It's just people acting in their class interests. Yeah, there was a book by there's some fucking liberal that's called the Dark Knight and the Puppet Master, which is essentially a liberal kind of dissection of what they think leftists believe. Is if, for example, they believe that Corbyn lost the election because there was a cabal of conspirators trying to destroy him from outside because they were just evil internally, which is like. It just shows how little liberals believe in materialism as a philosophical concept. Like, no, we just believe in like incentive structures and material interests, right? They don't have to be evil. They just have to be in a position where they benefit systemically from engaging in the things that they do. As I said, if you are a CEO of a company, you have a fiduciary responsibility to generate profit for your shareholders. If you stopped doing things that benefited your shareholders, you'd stop giving the money to the think tanks. It's really simple, right? The system is set up for people to act within their, especially the bourgeois, to act within their specific class interests. So I don't really blame any of them specifically, but you got to blame the system. You got to blame the institutions, right? There's no people. That's why people are so quick to be able to throw the anti-Semitism accusation at leftists, because when they hear bourgeois or the moneyed class or the elites or the establishment or whatever, they think we mean Jews, because only in a liberal's mind, you can only be accusing people rather than systems. There has to be some puppet master at the top who controls things that would be the target of our. No. We hate capitalism. We hate a system which prioritizes this stuff. People are all just actors within the system, and that's why that accusation gets levied at the left so often.
People are allowed their privacy. It's a right. It's interesting if we look at.
Yeah, I understand that it's a right, and I'm not saying that they should have the state should force them. The state should come in and infiltrate their databases, trying to find out who funds them. But it's very telling about the institution or the institution's motives about the fact that they don't. That's what it is. No one's forcing you to give up your privacy. What we're saying is the fact that you're being private about this is incredibly telling about your political ideology.
Byline Times' shareholders, they're not so squeaky clean, are they, either? Max...
We're paid for
Mosley, is it?
No. We are paid for by our subscribers.
We're entirely funded by our subscribers. Fascist.
We're entirely paid for by our subscribers. And people can look at who our shareholders are.
Are they? Let me have a look. I didn't even know the funding of Byline Times. At least they're open about it, right? And she's trying to say, "Oh, I hate you because you're funded by somebody that I don't like." Well, we don't even know who funds you because you won't tell us. Crowdfunding. Subscriber funded Byline TV. It doesn't say. But either way, it's something that at least has some level of grassroots funding, which the IEA certainly doesn't have.
People can, and we put our subscribers on the front of our newspaper. People can't look at the IEA and see who funds them.
They can see a breakdown. They can see a breakdown. Some of our donors.
There's no real breakdown on the website.
Say where they're from.
Misleading listeners by suggesting there is. Nobody can go on your website and see who funds your organisation.
You can see where proportionately the spending comes from. The donation.
Like, Byline Times is fine. I hate the fact that the Liberals, they go after the left for nonsense accusations incredibly often. Peter Jukes is very cringe. But I like Hardeep Matharu. Like, Marina Purkis is good to listen to. Like, I don't massively hate Byline Times. Like, they put out good content, and the investigative work they've done on Tory corruption has been useful and good. Like, I have no doubt that Peter Jukes is somebody with very pure intentions. I just get frustrated at how, about the fact they go and then they do go after the left. It's all, they seem to only ever think that every single leftist is somehow a paid Russian actor, which, to be fair, some of them are. Like, we've all seen Jackson Hinkle, right? We've all seen George Galloway. But the fact that he seems to think that everybody who supports Jeremy Corbyn or supports, even basic social democratic platforms in the UK is somehow all part of this kind of Russian influence sphere. The Paul Mason map, the Paul Mason kind of weird diagram where he thinks that everyone's funded by Russians, which Peter Jukes kind of buys into. But the reporting in general is fine. Like, it's fine.
Nations come from.
What does that mean proportionally? What does that mean? Can people go on your website?
Fundamentally, we protect the privacy of our donors.
So they can't?
They can look at the proportion, and also some of our donors do express that openly.
But you have to understand that if you aren't transparent, and what was the saying, transparency is the best form of disinfectant, if you aren't transparent, then of course people are going to think the worst, aren't they? They're going to imagine that a fossil fuel company will have paid you to come out with a report which says something that happens to be quite obliging to them. Now, I've had dealings with think tanks on the left and right for probably 30 years, and I genuinely don't believe that sort of thing goes on, that you have...
Because again, Ian, you just think that everything has to be done because of some kind of ulterior motive, rather than it being a systemic issue with people's material interests. Like, and left think tanks being neoliberals or being like social liberals, right? Like the New Economic Foundation or whatever it is, just seems like social liberalism, really, to me. Just like Tom Tugendhat style, really.
Have paid.
Although I will not hear a word against whatever her bloody name is, the black woman. Miata Fanbale, that's the one. She's excellent. I really like her.
It's the law.
You have paid for research.
That's not what happens.
No, but don't you see that you're kind of feeding into this narrative that it does happen, and that's people suspect
I would believe that if it weren't for the fact that the accusations that come our way are by people who fundamentally disagree with the ideology or the policy proposals of our think tank.
Yeah, I mean, they disagree with them a hell of a lot more now, Emily. Now they've wrecked the country. But yeah, it's almost like people disagree with them because it's against their material interests to agree with them, because you are a propagandist for rich people. It's really simple. It's really simple, Emily. Like, again, just a basic level of material analysis, please. I'm begging every single liberal to just material analyze at least any situation. I'm just absolutely desperate for it. But yeah, as I said, it's just, we are here because the media willed it, and because the Conservative Party members are idiots. And the Conservative Party is going to get destroyed unless they do drastic changes now, and they only have themselves to blame. Very, very simple.